You are listening to the Health and Wellness Podcast, curated by Dr. Lori Marzell. Dr. Marzell is a primary care physician that combines the wisdom of natural medicine with modern medicine to help facilitate the body's inherent ability to restore and maintain optimal health. She focuses on evidence-based nutritional therapy for food allergies and in bioidentical hormone replacement. She is a twice published author, a long-standing member of the North American Menopause Society, and a certified menopause practitioner. We are on a mission to empower you with the knowledge and expertise that Dr. Marzell has earned throughout her career. We hope you enjoy and want to thank you for being with us today. Without further ado, here's Dr. Marzell. Enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Dr. Marzell back again to talk a little bit more about food allergies, and perhaps I've whetted your appetite considering that maybe you have food allergies. How would you know? What things should you look for, and how could you get tested? How does it work? Well, let me talk a little bit about that. The previous talk I gave was on chronic infections, recurrent infections. Food allergies work in two major ways with the human body and with animal bodies too, I'm sure. But with humans, it stimulates production of antibodies. The body, if there's a food allergy, is recognizing this particular food as a foreign invading protein. So it's going to try to kill it. So what happens is your white blood cells will actually, when they notice a protein that is linked to something it doesn't like, it will feel the kind of the edge of that protein, and that information will go to the nucleus of the cell. And the cell will say, oh no, I don't like that. Let's get rid of it. And it will produce an antibody specific to hooking on to that particular protein. This is how blood tests work. They expose your white blood cells to a disc of a food protein. And that disc is usually labeled. The white blood cells go see what it is and decide whether they like that and don't care, or if they're going to produce a bunch of antibodies which will hook in. The hooking in of the antibodies to the disc can be measured, and the intensity of the reaction, it can be bar graphed. So you know, is this a small reaction? Oh, it's probably not that big of a deal. Or is it running off the paper because your blood cells just hate that food? Maybe you never realized it, but there's the evidence. This is really good for engineers to see graphed out responses. It's hard to argue with this. So how do you know if you might have food allergies? Well, let me tell you a few little tricks. Number one, if you have other allergies, any kind of other allergies, if you have seasonal allergies, if you're allergic to grass or mold or things in the air, you probably have some things in the food department that you also are sensitive to. I'm reminded of many of my patients when trying to work with them. If they know they have environmental allergies, there are many, many, many people who are allergic to mold in the air. And what do they eat in their diet? They have cheese. The more moldy, the better. The cheese is a product of milk plus mold. The mold converts the milk to the cheese. And the more aged the cheese is, like cheddar cheese and brie, has a little thick hunk of mold over the top of it. Any kind of fermented drinks, which are really popular nowadays, these are fermented drinks. Wine, um, beer, these are fermented. Sauerkraut. There's a difference between these and cultured, where they are growing bacteria, good bacteria, like yogurt. This is not fermented, it is cultured. And it's cultured with good bacteria that you want in your body. So if someone says, "Oh yes, I'm allergic to mold. I can't stand being around mold," and you see, well, they have a brie snack in the afternoon, and then they have a little bit of a fermented drink, and then they have they love mushrooms. They're a mold. They're in the mold family. And you say, "Hey, I'm seeing all this fermented stuff and molds here. You know, this is mold that you're eating and you're exposed to." "Oh, really? Ugh, I don't want to do that." Well, you are. So the point I'm trying to make is that environmental allergies frequently expose that this person has allergic tendencies and can be food allergic as well. Other signs to look for, when people are having a reaction to food allergies, the second option that their body has to kind of try and get rid of or weaken that assault from the food allergy is to bloat up with water, to swell. Now, I give people the example of, if you were stung by a bee, your arm would swell. This is a poison. It's inducing an inflammatory reaction, and that's causing swelling. The body's idea is, "I don't like this poison. I will swell up to dilute the poison." So, how does that manifest if you're wondering if you're one of those individuals that has food allergies? Well, there's a little test you can do where you try and curl up your fingers to touch the crease that is between your fingers and the palm of your hands. If you have a hard time touching that by curling your fingers up, you probably have a little swelling in your fingers. Now, you may have arthritis, you may have some joint deformities or things like that, but that gives you a little idea. When I have a patient in the office, I feel around their neck and I check for glandular swelling, because if people are eating foods, it's touching their mouth, the mucosa, oral mucosa, throat. All that has a lot of lymph tissue around it. People often have swollen tonsils. That's a good thing to look for. Their lymph glands around their necks are frequently swollen. I had one patient who was allergic to coffee, and I kind of convinced her she needed to stay away from coffee, even though she really liked it. So she was pretty good for a while, and she had some back problems. And one time she came in, and I was working on her back, and I was trying to look for where she was having a problem, and I pushed my fingers into each side of her vertebrae just gently, and I took my fingers away, and there was an indentation from where my fingers were. That's how swollen this patient was. And so I asked her, "Have you been drinking coffee again?" And she goes, "Yes! How did you know?" I go, "I can tell." So you can develop swelling anywhere, but this could indicate there is a problem with a food allergy. Now, sometimes people will notice swelling underneath their eyes, in the very lower lid of their eyes. And when that swells, it has a very thin layer of tissue there. So the blood vessels can look darker if there is swelling. So dark circles under the eyes are another marker for food allergies. Sometimes especially with children, that area can become so swollen that it kind of laps over and produces a line between the under eye area and the rest of the cheek. These are called Denny's lines. It doesn't matter what they're called, but it just indicates, does this child have food allergies? This is something to think about. The other deal that if you were looking for, do I have food allergies or does my friend, you can walk around the grocery store and see if you can pick people out with food allergies using these quite helpful techniques. But another way that you can tell is food allergies frequently cause chronic sinus problems. So you've got postnasal drainage that's going on all the time. People have to blow their nose all the time. They sniff a lot. They clear their throats a lot. I had a friend who I worked in his clinic for a while. And we would go out to lunch, and every time we would go out to this particular Chinese restaurant, he would order his favorite sweet and sour soup. Now, I don't know what was in this particular soup, but every time he ordered it, he'd start eating it, and within just a few minutes, he'd be and he would do this throughout the whole eating thing of the soup. And finally I told him, you've got food allergies. And he craved this soup. It was his favorite thing. This is also typical of food allergies. Stay tuned, and I'm going to do another podcast on food allergies. And let's talk about some other ways of testing and getting some more signs to see if you could stop the reaction from a food allergy. Stay tuned, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's content, please feel free to share with a friend and help us spread our message. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Marzell, please visit our website at www.drmarzell.com. Until next time.